Hello and welcome to the Roar Rugby Podcast for 2024. And we all know a new World Cup cycle often brings new coaches all around the world, perhaps new players being introduced, but it's also a big change in the podcast world too. I'm Christy Doran, the Roar Rugby editor, and I've been tasked with a very, very big one in terms of coming in and filling the lofty shoes of Brett Mackay and Harry Jones, who are off to other things, other ventures with their own podcasts. Wish them all the best and thank you for their efforts over the years. But it also means that I'm going to be introducing a new co-host for this year for the Roar Rugby Podcast, and that's a two-time World Cup member, a man who played 59 tests over about a decade for the Wallabies, and that is Mr. Matt Toomua. How are you?
G'day, Christy. Yeah, good, mate. Excited to join. Not sure if I'll be able to fill the shoes of Harry, but yeah, looking forward to it, mate.
There's plenty of ground to chew over, and it's been a pretty tumultuous few months, certainly since the World Cup. We know it was a disappointing campaign for the Wallabies, crashing out in the pool stage for the first time. But we know as well a new Wallabies coach with Joe Schmidt. I'm super interested to hear what your thoughts are around him. But more recently, in the headlines, the Melbourne Rebels, the future of them, the future of Super Rugby, which starts in less than a week's time. So we'll be covering all that sort of ground, and we'll also be welcoming Nic White onto the podcast in a little bit on the other side of this. So Matt Toomua, it is pretty early on a Sunday morning in Japan. Whereabouts are you?
Yeah, so at a place called Fujisawa, which is near Chigasaki, which probably means nothing to you, but basically on the water down south, not too far from Tokyo. So about an hour or so into Sagamihara, which is where I train. So yeah, it's a pretty good area actually. It's not too built up as most of Japan is. Get a normal sized house and normal sized roads. So mate, it's pretty good.
What does that mean from a coffee perspective when it's early on a Sunday and it's in the middle of winter? What's your situation there? You set up. I know that you're a big coffee drinker.
Yeah. As I said earlier, I had a little bit of an emergency this morning. Woke up and went to the machine and it was empty, so I had to jump on a bike and go to the local vending machine. Which, to be fair, winter they're heated. So I got two of these. This is not product placement, believe it or not. They aren't sponsored of the show. I don't even know what brand they are, to be fair. But yeah, pretty desperate. I didn't want to be too lethargic on the pod, so I tried to jam two of them, and we'll see how we go.
Because you are a big coffee drinker, have you still got your cafes down in Canberra?
Yeah. Got quite a few there now. The little cafe group, 2 before 10. Check it out if you're down there. But yeah, it's I'm a little bit coffee obsessed. We're pretty lucky here actually. We've got a nice little machine at work. So yeah, I get my little fix that way. But yeah, no, it's a little bit slim pickings in Japan. They're not really into the third wave coffee culture that we have in Australia or Melbourne.
I'm sure if you stay there long enough, I wouldn't be surprised if you open up a cafe there and it probably go bonkers. What actually took you over to Japan? And we know that you kind of toured and spent a long time around the world. You played at Leicester Tigers. You came back to the Melbourne Rebels after a long stint at Brumbies, and then you've been in Japan now for a couple of seasons.
Yeah. Oh, same reason I did this pod. The money. No. No, a little bit of that, I guess. I was the end of my kind of career. I came here just before the World Cup. I probably started to realize my form wasn't as good as it needed to be for the World Cup, and I thought I'd probably need a new challenge. And yeah, Japan's really good in terms of the time zones. Only 1 or 2 hours, depending on what city. But yeah, and then it's quite easy flights. As you said, I was in England beforehand, and that was pretty isolated from Australia. So yeah, it's been really good. A little bit easier on the body here, but there's lots of running, and there's its own challenges with foreign players. You can't have too many on the field. You can only have about 3 or 4, and then yeah, it's good. I've really enjoyed it. It's been like a little bit reinvigorating after a few hard years with COVID and whatnot down there at Super.
Yeah, and one of the fascinating things about the Japan League One and League Two there is it's really picked up massively. You just have to look at the influx of All Blacks players that have left since the World Cup, and from Brodie
Mm.
Retallick to Aaron Smith, Artie Savita, Sam Cane are all up there. Um, did you see yourself? Was this like a long time in the making going to Japan, or did it interest you many years ago? And it's just when you know that you're at the tail end of your career that it was a good opportunity to get up there.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't say it was a long-term plan. It's very much kind of after a couple years of where I probably didn't get selected for the Wallabies, and as I said, my form wasn't as good, and you start realizing, look, there's probably not a huge future in Australia at the moment, and maybe I need to look elsewhere a little bit. So yeah, it was kind of it all happened pretty quickly. Um, but yeah, it's been really good. It's never a case of you go somewhere. It's a lot easier. There's a lot more expected of you here because you can only have a certain amount of foreign players in a team, and particularly playing fly half or center, you've got to half coach a lot of it. Yeah, so you definitely you definitely worked hard here. As I said, there's a lot more expectations, so it's been really good. As I said, I've really enjoyed it.
And it kind of has come out of this amateur age where you've still got players that are workers for various companies, and it's very much company driven, the Japanese competitions. What does that mean from a day-to-day life in terms of training differences and even from the language barrier? How does it
Mm.
go from a operations perspective when you're out there and you're the 10 calling the shots? Have you picked up Japanese along the way?
Yeah, it's very interesting. So all the teams, for those who don't know, all the teams are named after companies. So they're essentially a way that big companies, in the past, they were a way that big companies kind of either kept up morale or built a little bit of a culture within the company. So my team is Mitsubishi. We play against Panasonic and all that kind of stuff. So it is interesting. Traditionally, they had a lot of company workers who would work 9 to 5, and then they'd come and train in the afternoon. It has evolved a little bit now. Like, so we only have about 3 or 4 company workers, and they're company workers by choice, basically. So they have a job after rugby. So it's a little bit different. But look, operationally, it's pretty good. It's pretty normal in the sense that we have most of our coaches are all foreign, so they're Kiwis. So we train kind of normal hours. A lot of the stuff is, it's very similar to what you do at home. The language barrier is very interesting. So you have a few players who can speak both languages, but we have translators running on the field. So a lot of your water boys might be, okay coaches or whatever, but they can translate. So that's a little bit more interesting. Yeah, and then from my point of view, when you're saying causey, I often got to say things with a either Japanese accent or in real poor Japanese. So I find if I add o to things, it helps. So paso to mato and on the righto. But it's no, it's good. We do Japanese lessons and whatnot and try our best, but under pressure it can be interesting.
So there might be a few people wondering why Matt Toomua has jumped in on the podcast. He's up in Japan. How much Super Rugby is he really watching? Why have you decided to jump on the pod?
Money, mate. I told you. It's put my daughter through private school. No, look, I still love the game. Always have. Rugby was always a hobby for me first, and then I was, very fortunate enough to make a career out of it. I still watch all the Super games. Stan use it on the dodgy VPN over here and watch all the games, and I think they still give it to me for free. I might still be on the. They might still think I'm playing down there, so don't tell them that. But yeah, mate, I love footy. I love rugby. Very passionate about rugby in Australia as well, where it's going. Still got a lot of mates there as well, so I like to message them and see how it's all going. It's kind of a way of keeping in touch with everything.
Do you get the feeling like a lot of the expats that go up to Japan, do they still keep watching Super Rugby, or do they just kind of half switch off?
I reckon most watch it, eh? You'll come in on, say if we've got a game on Saturday, you'll come in and everyone will be talking about the game the night before, or if we're traveling, the foreign boys will be watching it on their phones. As much as we're engrossed here, we don't know too many people in the other League One teams other than the foreigners, whereas most of us are still kind of connected to where we grew up or where we played. So I think everyone kind of still keeps in touch with the Super. So it's nice.
All right, let's get into a couple of thorny sort of things. Now, we want to make sure that here, the Royal Rugby Pod, that we continue to be engaged with those that are listening. So please, in future episodes, we do want to be hearing your questions. So shout out, whether or not on the Twitter sphere, feel free to get in touch via email, whatever methods and means you're able to. But yes, please, questions, or if you want shout outs for your certain clubs that are perhaps celebrating milestones, get in touch. A couple of big things, and we've already hinted upon them, but Joe Schmidt, new Wallabies coach, when did you kind of get the sense that he perhaps might be in the running for it? And what's your impressions been in the first almost a month since he was announced in the mid-Jan as Eddie Jones's replacement?
Yeah, I think once Peter Horn got signed, probably it started to, you hear whispers that, the connection, the Irish connection. I think, we were speaking to Nussie for a while, and excuse me, which was very smart. So yeah, I guess a guy like him, I think he would have been top of the pile in terms of people to aim for. Whilst we've got some good Aussie candidates, I think his record kind of speaks for itself. Heard he's a very detailed person, very, very, very hard on the guys, which I think is what we need. Probably, I think last year, if you look at a couple of the games, we, very much had this kind of romantic idea of how we want to play rugby, heads up rugby, and no structure and all that kind of stuff. And as much as that's exciting and it sells, it doesn't win games. And for us to win games, we need to kind of build a strong base. So, hopefully Joe can do that. It's always an exciting time this time of year because, there's no games up on the weekend. So it's always quite positive. So, no, I think it's an awesome get. I don't think there's many coaches out there really who we would have preferred other than him. So I think it's a huge get. But the work starts now, I guess.
Someone who was linked, and I know for a fact that he was interested without necessarily publicly coming out and saying, I want to be the Wallabies coach, is Dan McKellar. What did you would have been coached by Dan, maybe not as a head coach, because I think you left to join the Tigers before he was announced, but you would have seen him from an assistant coaching perspective and maybe even the Wallabies as well.
Yeah, Dan, and once again, he's one of the the very good Aussie candidates. Look, I think he's just signed at Tigers for a few years. Look, I reckon in 3 years' time, he's going to be an amazing candidate, like even better. Coaching a team like Leicester in a different environment there. They've got 3 competitions that they've got to manage, that they've got a squad manage. They've got, the seasons. They've got to play against different teams. I think having that Northern Hemisphere experience is really good. I know from a player's point of view, going there, coming back, your problem solving is a lot higher because, as I said, you're managing seasons, you're managing different teams, you're managing all sorts of things. So, look, I think Dan would have been great, but I think he'll be even better in 3 years' time, basically. So, I'm kind of glad that we've got Joe now, and look, I wouldn't be surprised if we head down the McKellar route a little bit later.
Yeah, and it's interesting that I think Joe Schmidt, perfect candidate, and he's got the runs on the board. He managed to turn the All Blacks around a fair extent. I think he and Jason Ryan, when they came in to join Ian Foster's coaching team in the middle of 2022, it does kind of raise questions around coach development in Australia, though, because with the exception of perhaps Bernie Larkham as well, who you know really, really well, there weren't that many strong Australian candidates, were there? And like you've been coached at a national perspective by Ewan McKenzie, Michael Checker, Dave Rennie. Where do you see Australian coaching, the Australian coaching kind of ranks now, having kind of experienced some of the best not that long ago to a bunch of guys at the moment that don't have that much kind of trophies behind them or international experience behind them either?
Yeah, look, I think it's a few years ago, but I think it's probably one of the number one areas we can improve. We have this tendency in Australia to think that the head coach is going to solve everything. We hire him, we give him free reign, and then if he doesn't, we get rid of him, and then he's out, and then we go with the new guy, and there's just no kind of succession planning. Everything is it's just flipped on its head, and then we've got to get a new coach, and then we've got to completely learn things. And we get excited by it all, goes, and then the honeymoon period's over, and then we get rid of them. And you see that on an international level, like a lot, obviously, but you see that at a club level in Australia. And I just think building, like, whilst we want results in Australia, and I think it's often driven by that because we are competing in such a competitive market with league and AFL and whatnot. And I don't know, clubs maybe feel like they've got to be seen to making a stand or not accepting losses, like that kind of succession planning or just that stability. It's not there. It's not there enough in rugby. And I think Brumbies have probably done it the best. You've seen a couple coaches come here and there, but then you see, a lot of guys in the background stay. So like a guy like Laurie Fisher has been there for ages. You're going to get the same thing, and then we've moved Dan and Stephen Larkin comes back in, and there is just a little bit of succession. There is kind of a Brumbies way. So I think that for me has been something that's probably annoyed me a lot when I played. A coach goes, and then you've got to learn a whole new system. And I think we're just asking too much of coaches. I think it's a bit hard on them, to be honest. There's no kind of coach development. How are they learning? Where are they learning from? And we don't give them kind of a little bit of grace. We just think that off their head coach, they should know everything. And it's not the case. You don't think about that with players. If a player comes and he plays poorly or whatever, you might, you develop him as a player, or it takes a little bit of time to get his form back. I think coaches probably need a little bit of the same mindset because,
We're going to get to Nic White in just a second. I know that he's standing by patiently. If there was one or two things that you want to see from a Joe Schmidt kind of coaching regime to begin with, one or two areas, maybe simple fixes, perhaps building the coaching team, what would it be?
I think I'm like anyone. We just kind of want results. I know that's a bit hard. It's a little bit hard to say. Look, I think stability. Like these things take time. I'm by no means expecting us to be back to number one, number two in the world in a year's time. I think it's going to take a little bit of time. I just think seeing some stability, seeing some vision, it will be good. I think we've seen already that the change in the head coach is not always the answer to what we need. There's a lot more with it. So I think somehow engaging the super clubs, seeing some progression, and just seeing a little bit of logical decisions within selection and long-term planning would be good. So a little bit of a boring answer, I know, but as much as anyone, I'm keen for results, but I just think that it will take a little bit of time.
Well, speaking of a man who's going to know a little bit about that and perhaps the direction we need to go to, but also someone that's gone to a new franchise is Mr. Nic White. He'll be joining us in a second.
Gecko.
Nicholas.
There you go.
Oh, God. Just for anyone who's watching this, Whitey's put his name as Gecko. He was trying to get everyone to call him Gecko. One time he goes, mate, I've got this new nickname. I reckon you can call me Gecko. So I'm trying to say, look at him. He's checked it on now.
Persistence.
Nic White.
Persistence.
Tell us, mate. Tell us a little bit more about the Gecko. You're sitting in a car there for those watching. You've probably on your way to the Western Force training. What's going on?
I'm sitting outside HQ. Gecko, no, I didn't push it. When I went to Exeter, we had a sand dune session, and I was doing all right with my funny little legs running up the sand dunes. And Johnny Hill, one of the funny buggers over there, that David Attenborough series where that lizard, I don't think it's a gecko actually, but that lizard running away from all the snakes with funny little bowed legs, that came out that night. So that got put up, and gecko kind of stuck. And I was pushing it because when I got back, it was Righty and Whitey, Tom Wright and Nic White, and that was kind of bugging me. So I pushed gecko, and the more I pushed it, the more guys pushed back. It's never stuck.
Whitey always had Woody from Toy Story, if you look at the shape of his legs. But I'll never forget when Whitey, your debut, and I think it might have been Paul Cully described you as an energetic player who looks like he just jumped off a lengthy ride on a well-fed horse. I thought that was brilliant.
That's great memory. Yeah. I certainly have very distinct legs, a distinct gait.
Yeah, well, you still got that energy, don't you, Nick? And a new Super Rugby franchise, the Western Force, mate, how pumped are you? Because I know that you're pretty passionate about staying at the Brumbies, but are you glad that you've managed to make a new home out of the Force?
Yeah, I am. It's been really refreshing coming across here, and Chrono's far exceeded my expectations of where these guys are at. Like it's a really well run program. Lifestyle, obviously, it all starts at home. Mel and the kids are really enjoying it, and if they're happy, I'm happy, and it allows me to come to work every day nice and early with a smile on my face, and yeah, like I said, it's they've got a lot of things right over here at the moment. Chrono and the coaches have signed on for a long, a few more years, and there's good stability here, and they've got a vision for where they want to take it, and all those things kind of make it easier for us to just kind of head down, bum up, and go about our work, and we've been doing plenty of that.
Nick, what do you think about the new co-host of the Roar Rugby Podcast, Matt Toomua? Are you surprised that he's jumped on?
No, I think he's good. I'm a little bit surprised with where he's at the moment. The both of you, actually. Fresh dads. Gee whiz, you guys would be swimming some.
Just trying to get a reprieve, mate. It's been a hard couple nights. No, full disclosure, Christy actually tried to get Whitey, but he couldn't afford him, so they went down the list a little bit. So the raw budget's a little bit tighter than we thought. So they've got the ex-player. I thought I'd do something.
What they did is they started with a bloke who's got 3 kids and worked his way back down to a bloke who's only got 1, who's still got a little bit of time.
Well, much like Joe Schmidt, you've always got to look to your own backyard before you go elsewhere. And so I just thought, Nic White's playing here, and Matty Toomua obviously up in the land of the rising sun. But tell us a bit more about you guys. You guys played alongside each other for so long. Is it a bit weird when that kind of relationship, partnership, not breaks up, but you end up going on your own kind of ventures and doing your own thing, don't you?
Yeah, it's obviously started right back. We're going right back with Matty. He taught me all about professionalism. Got some cracking stories. Matty came out of school very professional. I was eating meat pies, Kit Kat Chunkies, Monaco bars, and
you were eating meat pies. He thought he was fancy, so before a session he was at home and he had 2 meat pies, but he was eating it with knife and fork, and he thought that was like healthy, so he didn't change it. He had his tomato sauce there, and he's eating. I go, mate, what are you doing? He goes, what? I'm eating. I've got lunch. Very, very raw at the time, but I think I was eating sushi or something anyway, so it wasn't much better.
No, you took me under my wing, and we've always been pretty close. I think the most stinks I've had with any player is Matty. We've had a few of them as well, and we quickly become best mates. And luckily we've had some. We've also shared some journeys overseas. Obviously, we went to Leicester, I went to Exeter, and we caught up plenty over there. And it is. It's been exciting. Also, we kind of went apart, but also kind of the journeys come back together. We came back to the Wallabies together. It's been a very cool journey, and I've been pretty lucky. to have someone like Matty, who's I think you guys are pretty lucky as well to have him on the podcast, because he's not only knows the game really well, he's been in it for the longest period of time. He's someone that I've always, if I'm a bit pickled on what's happening in the game, he's the first person I ask. So you got a good rugby brain right there.
Geez, you got quite on the rap there, Matt.
Jesus, a bit of pressure now. Thanks.
No, there's not. just speak your mind like you always do.
I thought of actually having a beer or two before I jump on here, but Christy decided to get us. Oh, well, no, you decided to get us up at 7:30 in the morning. So I think that's probably frowned upon.
Well, I'm sure that'll come in the episodes to come. Nick, it's less than a week before Super Rugby starts. I imagine you're busting your gut to get out there, because you probably get sick of pre-seasons. What is this, about your 15th or so?
I think so. Not quite as many as Matty. I will tell you a funny story. Matty almost broke me on my first pre-season, so I left school. And Andy Friend kind of said, well, mate, do you want to come down and join the Brumbies, or do you want to go to Schoolies? Because I booked Schoolies. And I was like, well, that's an easy decision. See you later, Schoolies. I'm heading down. And I go down there in our first session, and, and camera kind of pollen in the airs hit me. I'm a bit of an asthmatic, and I'm struggling. Like, I'm really struggling. So I've got the guys, the likes of Matt Toomua, who are like 20, 25, 30 kilo heavier than me at this stage. And we're going to wrestle and run. And I've lost every single wrestle. So we wrestle in the in goal. I sprint out to the 22, come back, and I've got, I don't know, Afasifu Tamopiao like there, who just throws me straight on the ground. Sweet. Out I go again. And I'm doing this for like 10 minutes. And then I head over, and I've never done a 3-point stance in my life. And Marshy goes, all right, on the line, everybody, we're doing 600-metre sprint, 3-point stance. We go and do a 600-metre sprint. Comes back and he goes, one of you won't bloody do a 3-point stance. I didn't know what that was. It's like, mate, it's my first day. Anyway, so I'm feeling bad, because the likes of guys like Sterling Mortlock are looking down the line like, who's this prick making us do extras? And it's me, 18 years old. And anyway, so then I've had to do a couple of extras on my own on the side, because I don't know what I'm doing. And then I come running back, and I think Matty can see the kind of, I'm welling up in my eyes. I'm fully broken. And I said to Matty, I said, oh, mate, how long to go? And he goes, oh, we're about halfway. And in my mind, I broke. I was like, oh no, we're done. Like, I cannot do another of this. Like, if that's halfway.
Weren't you asking for your asthma puffer? You were like, oh shit, I've got to go get my asthma puffer.
I couldn't breathe at the time. I'm trying to take in some Ventolin, and I'm like, oh no, I can't do this. Oh, this is too much for me. And then as I hear Marshy goes, all right, we're done. That's it. I looked across at Matty, and he's laughing as I'm literally welling up, trying to get some air in my lungs. I was like, yeah, well done, 1-0. And that was the start of pre-season 1, and here we are 15 later, and to be honest, not a lot's changed. I'm still struggling, but they're all difficult.
Less pollen over there, though, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. But it's been good. It's been a really good pre-season. I am chomping at the bit to get through this one and get to round 1, and we're here. It's Sunday morning here, but it's like a Monday because we've got a Friday night game. So I'm sitting in the car park now of HQ, ready to get in there.
Very flash. That wasn't the preseason we got banned from writing those posties, because you were going up, what do they call it? You were going trying to do jumps on it. We all had these posties, Christy. The what are they? Honda C2 125s or whatever. We bought them at the auctions, and we had about 5 of us used to go to training in them. And then Whitey decided to try and do some jumps and whatnot off speed bumps, and then we all got banned from using it for a while. But we had a good little group, actually. That was good fun.
It was a postie.
You can do it.
Yeah.
You can do whatever you want, I suppose, when you're 18 or 19, and in Canberra, it's like the pyrographics place is the capital of the world almost, isn't it? Imagine you would have got a couple of fireworks happening.
There was a bit of that going on. It was, we learnt things the hard way in Canberra.
What?
Quite young, but...
So you got opening night. It's the Hurricanes, isn't it? And
it is, yeah.
It's a big first game. There's been a bit of a cultural shift at the Force. There's a bunch of new players. Does it? I imagine a few years ago, the Western Force wasn't the sort of franchise that you were looking at going at, but they've managed to turn a real corner, it seems, under Cronny. New captain in Jeremy Williams. a young captain as well. I believe you're part of the leadership team. You might have kind of had an inkling earlier last week that he was going to be named skipper. Tell us a little bit more around him and some of the leadership qualities that stand out about Jeremy.
Yeah, I think Jeremy being announced as captain really shows the vision of where the club want to go. And I think that's awesome. I think, as soon as I got here, you can kind of see that Jeremy's a leader. He's the type of guy that leads with a lot of his actions. But, not too dissimilar to what I was saying about Matty. For a young guy, really mature head, really professional, dragging a lot of these young guys with him. And like I said, it kind of matches where the club's at and what they're doing right is a lot of stability, a real clear vision of where they want to go. And, and he's a huge part of that, not to lump too much pressure on him as a 23-year-old. But that's where they want to go. And they've got such a young squad here. So, yeah, look, the allure of coming over here was to be part of, obviously I still feel like I've got some good years, but to be part of building what they've got here already and where I want to take it. And, myself and Wellesley will make sure we look after Jeremy this year. And, the future is bright, not only for him, but for a lot of the group here, super young. And, it's the next couple of years could be pretty bright over here.
The force as well. You've got Ben Donaldson there. There's Isaac Fines, Lele Oasa, Max Beery, Rajan Pasatoa. There's a fair bit of depth that's all of a sudden kind of appeared at the force. How's it? I know it's right at the start of the week. You might not know what the selection is going to be, but how does that work when you come to a new franchise and you've got an incumbent in Isaac Fines, Lele Oasa, who was also a part of that World Cup squad last year? What's the feeling been like in terms of the competitiveness to get that starting jersey between all of you?
Yeah, I think we're all competitors at the end of the day and all want that jersey. But it's the first thing I did when I knew I was going to the force and going to be announced was I called Finesy and said, at the end of the day I'm coming across and I feel like I've got some good years left. But part of me coming across is I want to give him as much knowledge as I can and make him the best player he can be. And that's the mindset we're taking with the whole group of the 9s and 10s is, whoever puts that jersey on, it's about us setting them up to do well, setting the team up to do well. So, look, we're competitive. We'll go at it at training as 9s and 10s and the whole way through the team. But at the end of the day, a real team first here. So, if we can be part of, whoever puts that jersey on, it's about we do whatever we can to make sure that they're right come Friday night against the Canes and we go out there, put our best foot forward and perform well. And if we perform well as a team, we'll be right there at the pointy end. So yeah, it's really just putting that team first forward as much as possible. And I've got an opportunity here now, like you said, with a guy like Finesy to really show that. And I'm excited by that challenge. And it's a different part of my career. I understand that, and I'm enjoying it. And get a chance. There's a guy here, Henry Robertson, as well, who's a young 9, and really enjoying passing on as much as I can. And look, if they go on to make it, I'll feel like I'm part of that story.
The other big one at the moment is, Nick, a few days' time, the new Wallabies documentary is going to be aired, the Wallabies 2023. I know a few people have been interested to see how it kind of plays out. What do you think? Are you looking forward to watching it? And you're a key character that I know that the punters will be able to see and acknowledge. You get a bit of an insight into your family and what it's like being a father as well as a Wallaby. Yeah,
I think the documentary will really shed light on, I guess, more than just the rugby side of things. I think probably everyone's hoping to see the car crash unravel, and I'm not sure it'll be so much about Eddie and the going-ons of our meetings and the technical and tactical side and therefore lacking and all that. It'll be more about the characters and a little bit what you said. Seeing a little bit of kind of like what I go through with having 3 boys at home and Mel and guys like Alan going through his injury and the type of guy he is and I guess the hope is that people, know us better and then are therefore invested more when they watch the game. Hopefully they feel like they know the likes of these characters a little bit better. So they're watching the game, they feel like they know us because they're a part of the journey as well. They're part of the rebuild that we're going through, and we've all got to do it together. So we're just hoping to, the documentary shows that sort of our personalities, because there's certainly some awesome personalities within that group. Obviously, we know how it ends up, so there's no surprise there. But
there's a spoiler alert, isn't there?
Yeah, jeez.
How did it feel?
I
How did it feel? Obviously, when it got sold, when it got sold to the public, I know when I saw it, you're like, "Oh, this would be awesome, little fairy tale." Eddie coming back, all the young boys, and then things didn't work out as good as we would have liked. Did you sometimes wish that the cameras weren't there at that point? You're just like, "Oh, listen, mate, we probably don't need you at this point." Like, was it a weird feeling?
Yeah, definitely. I certainly, and a few of us were like, "Oh, we want to get, want the cameras out of here, and don't want to be, much a part of this. This is going pear shaped." And they reassured us that it was, a lot about the hard work we were putting in and around the personalities and things like that. So also I think Eddie had a fair say on what gets shown. So I think that was always going to play its hand as well. So look, I think it'll be really good to, like I said, to see the personalities of it. And you're right, like when we were sold on it, you're like, this is going to be unbelievable. You've seen all the really good ones. You don't want to be a part of the one though where it all goes absolutely pear shaped and it's filming all of it. So, but that's part and parcel. And but like I said, from knowing that Eddie had a fair bit to say on what's shown and what isn't, you're not going to see, I guess, the full the technical tactical, more the the kind of what is coming and a lot around the personalities. So it'll be a good viewing. I'm looking forward to watching it, and can't wait for it.
We'll have to let you jump out in a second, Whitey. But just want to get your ideas on Joe Schmidt. Are you excited by him coming on board? And a second part question to that: Do you think that Joe would be willing to allow the cameras to come in for a Stan Wallabies doco part 2?
Part 2. See, there's a follow up. I am excited by Joe coming in. I think he's his kind of resume speaks for itself. What he did with Ireland. I think hearing from what the guys like Dane Coles are saying about him as well. Like I haven't met him, haven't spoken to him, but a lot of people saying like he really accountable. It sounds very Dave Rennie-esque in terms of the way he sees the game, but heard even more so in that if you've got a job, do your job. Very accountable, very pretty structured, and I think we need that for where we're at. As a team, it's certainly very, very different to what we had in 2023. And what we know is that all the really good sides in the world are doing that. So I'm excited by that. I know he's from what I hear, a hard taskmaster, and that's good as well. And look, there's obviously a whole lot about him we don't know, and I'm looking forward to that. And he's been in the All Blacks camp. That's good as well. Can ask him plenty of questions around that. Would he bring the cameras in? You'll have to ask him. Yeah, I think he'd be. Yeah, I think we just want to. We're in a position now where we're just head down, bum up, right? But we've also got to sell the game. I understand that, but there's probably a fair bit of hard work that needs to go in first, and be keen to just.
I get the feeling like there's no chance in the world that Joe Schmidt would want the cameras being brought in there, having described himself as boring just in his first press conference. But look, I want to ask you before I let you go. Yes, it seems on the surface that Rugby Australia got it horribly wrong, getting rid of Dave Rennie. But how disappointed are the two of you, having both played under him? And Nick, you went to the World Cup. How disappointed are you that he wasn't allowed the opportunity to take the group forward to the campaign in France?
Yeah, I gutted. Especially, like just so disappointed for him as well. But also the feeling of where we're at and where we're going, really disappointing.
Yeah, I thought it sucked as well from my point of view. He had worked on it for 3 years, laying the foundation, and we just got I don't know, under pressure. We made the wrong call in my mind. So kind of feels like Whitey and I spoke about this recently. Actually, it kind of feels like we're back at the start of that 3-year cycle or 4-year cycle now with someone who's going to try and implement some. Whereas, I spoke earlier about that kind of succession planning. It would be nice to be 4 years along, yet we've kind of just gambled and gone the way back. So, yeah, it is a bit disappointing.
What is it that stood out about Dave Rennie and just his coaching ability? And as a New Zealander that's replacing him as well, or now in the top coaching job, is there a distinct way that they coach, or they are subtle differences?
I'll go first. I find the Kiwis better tactically. So week to week, they'll add or change a few things tactically. One thing people probably don't realize about a lot of the Kiwi coaches they are extremely structured, very, very structured. They put a structure in place which allows you freedom to use options with that. So you know where your players are going to be, but you're not sticking to a script. You can play out the back, over the top, kick, whatnot. But there's real hard accountability on where the players have got to be and where. So, structure is often a word that in Australia we run away from because we like the old free-flowing days. But these days, with as organised as defences are, you've got to have a structure that you can kind of work within. As I say, structure gives you freedom, and I think Renz was pretty good with that. A lot of Kiwi coaches are surprisingly very structured coaches. I don't know how you found Cronny and obviously Renz as well, Whitey.
Yeah, it's exactly right. Like we're scared of the word structure, but it's not structured in terms of strict. Like what I'm trying to say, like the options are all available. So it's just what it is everyone has a place on the field at any point in time and a job to do. Within that, you've got every option available to like heads up. That is heads up rugby, but what you won't have is when you don't have accountability of where you're supposed to be, you won't get to the point where and we were at in the World Cup where the whole team is in 20 meters of the field, and you're wondering where we can't use the whole width of the field because no one's out on the other side. With Renz, and I'm finding with Chronos, it's like, okay, well, where's our eight travels? 6 and 2 on here. Center split. Everywhere has a job, has a home. And then it's the decisions are like open, like Matt said, like it's heads up. You know where everybody is. Every option is available to you. Now it's about decision making and making the right decisions. So I found it though, like I don't think it's a Kiwi thing. I just think it's good coaches. You kind of understand that you can't just kind of the days of just kind of the defenses are just too good now. You need to be so far ahead and so detailed, and need to know who's going to be in that position to be able to clean out, because defense is just so high line speed, and so many guys are on the ball these days. It used to be just you're worried about the 7, you're worried about Pocock or George Smith, and now you got to worry about every bugger. Like we've got some 9s who put their head over the ball now. Like.
Yeah, not you just yet, Nic White, but TJ Perinara probably.
Yeah, exactly. Some bigger bastards. Yeah, like fullbacks and wingers. Like wingers are putting their heads over the ball. So you know what I mean. So you got to be ahead of the game. In attack and really smart. And from hearing good things about Joe Schmidt's very similar. Dave was very very similar, and even to the point where I thought Dave's opened my mind to like counter attack and how structured and that was, and he viewed it as a set piece, the counter attack, and there's more counter attack opportunities than there is scrum and line out. So therefore, let's have a plan off the back of it. Let's go 2 or 3 phases of where everyone's going to be depending on where you land and where the fullback or wingers or whoever's bringing it back lands, and let's have a call for it. And that just like that, I think that blew everyone's mind as well. And it's again, it's we look across the ditch and we see all this kind of ball just kind of going around, but there's a lot more there's a lot more beneath that to allow them to be able to do that.
Hey, Nic White, so good to have you join the Roar Rugby Podcast today. You better get out there, and hopefully we see this 9-10 partnership between you two again on the show at some point.
Whitey, are you on Leo's booster seat? Because you're sitting pretty high up on that headrest. False advertisement here. You can give his booster seat back.
I'm not giving this away. I am boosted up.
Is that true? Is that true? That's on the record?
It's definitely true.
No, that'd be silly.
Are you allowed them in the driver's seat over there? Perth, they do it weird. They do it weird.
Just a footrest.
Nah. Thanks for coming on, Rip in. All the best for the year, and we'll talk again soon.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks,
Matty. Thanks, Christy. Bye.
So good to have Nic White. He's a bundle of energy, and he's looking taller all the time on that booster seat. Well played there, Matt Toomua. The elephant in the room here at the moment, heading into the Super Rugby season, and I was across the ditch in Auckland for the Super Rugby launch, the Super Rugby Pacific launch, and it was a really nice event, lovely day. I've never seen Auckland look so good. It was the stark contrast from the often gloomy kind of night skies that the Wallabies enter into a bloody slow cauldron. But the Melbourne Rebels, it dominated the Super Rugby discussions. I felt sorry for Rob Leota because every man and their dog wanted to ask about the Melbourne Rebels situation. How was it from a player's perspective? Look, what we know at this point in time is that they will play 2024. Super round will be played in Melbourne. But beyond that, it looks, with $20 million of debt, perhaps as high as $22 million, it looks like they are dead in the water beyond 2024. And that's a really tough pill to swallow for a lot of people. You played for the Melbourne Rebels. How are you feeling about the situation?
Yeah, it's quite sad, isn't it? I've obviously been messaging a fair few of the guys, admin and players about it, and reading bits here and there. I think at the start, I didn't believe it. I just thought, we're trying to get some press in the off season, but where there's smoke, there's fire, and it's it's really sad. I think from a playing perspective, you'll definitely have an emotional response from guys, which is a good thing. But how long that lasts for, mate, is probably the question. As the weather gets colder, as you start getting a few results that you probably didn't expect, and some injuries here and there, that's when these things will probably start to weigh on guys. I think initially everyone will be super motivated to play, but you can't ignore that. There's a lot of job insecurity. There's all sorts of things being said about the team, and I dare say there's not going to be too many articles written this year about the Rebels where the financial security of the club isn't mentioned. So I think that's really disappointing. Hopefully they find a way out of it. I'm not 100% sure if they will, in a way that we would like, or in a way that kind of resembles what we've got at the moment. But it's going to be tough. And as well, another thing, players, they're going to be low on resources from the club, and so it's going to be very hard, I think, for the players to kind of perform at their best this year.
The other aspect, and this speaks to the necessity for a decision to be made sooner rather than later, is that if the Rebels were to stay beyond 2024, the question is who would be left to actually be there? Because as we speak, there's already Josh Kemeny moved up to Northampton, and undoubtedly a little bit of the insecurity around the Rebels situation has meant that if you're thinking about going, you just pull the trigger. How many other players are in that situation will be the fascinating one. We know that guys like Taniela Tupou and Rob Leota are contracted for 2025, but already if the Rebels weren't to be there, they would be able to push a button and not just leave the Rebels, but leave Australian rugby. They would be able to take up options if they want overseas. So guys like Taniela Tupou, Lukan Salakai-Loto, Carter Gordon, who's off contract at the end of this year, it's going to be fascinating to see how quickly and how rock solid they stay with the Rebels over the next few weeks or month before a decision is made about the Rebels. which I think, from a journo's perspective is interesting, but that can also be really destabilising if bit by bit players start to leave.
Yeah. And look, as much as you'd hate to admit it, sorry, there's got a bit of echo there. As much as you hate to admit it, there'll be guys in the change rooms going, "Oh, you looking to go elsewhere?" Or, there will be little whispers. And like I said, as the year progresses, as the weather gets colder, as results start, as it requires a little bit more kind of resilience, that will happen. That's just the nature of it. And I think players, whilst they'll be very disappointed, players, you're going to move on because there's only this finite kind of period that you can play, and guys will be looking elsewhere. That's just the way it is. I think from a broader view, I hope that we can retain these guys in Australian rugby. This is thinking that the Rebels don't survive. But if it goes that way, it would be nice to see that us actually spread our talent within Australia, and we don't lose guys overseas like we have. Josh Kemney being the first kind of example or canary down the coal mine. We'll see how that goes, and hopefully we can keep a lot of guys in Aussie rugby because we need it.
Yeah, and the other interesting aspect is how, if indeed they were to collapse, how does Rugby Australia target players to go to specific franchises? And we know that the Waratahs have struggled financially. They're now come under the Rugby Australia umbrella, but for a franchise that has struggled up front in probably since the likes of Tatafu Pilota now, Wycliffe Palu, Jacques Poit-Gita, since those guys left the franchise, they've struggled up front. So you should be targeting, you would imagine, a Taniela Tupou or a Josh Cunham and a Lukan Solakau-Loto. The Queensland Reds, a local guy like Carter Gordon might wish to return, but obviously we're speaking under the assumption that perhaps the Rebels aren't there. There's also the other question is, this is very different to 2017 where the Rebels and the Force were pitted against one another. This is more or less a financial decision that's been forced upon Rugby Australia, not with themselves having taken out an $80 million loan at the end of last year. They're not really in a position to bring them under and back them up financially, which is probably what they've done in the past, having kind of thrown some money at them to help secure them. But it's almost, for RA and Australian Rugby has been discussing whether or not 5 sides is the way to go, or 4 sides, 3 sides. This allows Rugby Australia, I think, to an extent, to not have the blood on their hands like they did back in 2017 when they got ultimately rid of the Force, which was such a messy 4-month period. So hopefully that doesn't happen. Hopefully, regardless, Australian Rugby can start to perform better on the field, because we know that the Wallabies have won at less than 40% since 2016, since the World Cup in 2015. That's just not good enough. And we know that the Super Rugby franchises have struggled too. But the thing that encourages me is that the age profile is greater than what it was last year. There's been less players go abroad, unlike in New Zealand where they've lost half the All Blacks starting 15. The core base of players will be around Australian Rugby that were there last year too. So that's an encouraging thing. Just looking ahead for the season, Matt, there must be a few players that are getting you excited around where they are at, and it might be rookies, it might be guys that are 2 or 3 seasons into their career. Who's going to catch your eye, you think, this year?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think, just touching on what you said before, with we do have an element of stability. I think the World Cup and the Lions Tour has probably provided us with that, which probably helped us in that sense, that guys want to be around for such important kind of series. So that's a good thing. So we can build from that. I think, look, being a fly half inside 10, I'm obviously looking at a lot of the 10s. I'm actually really interested to see how Noah Lolesio goes. He, the start of the last World Cup cycle, he was probably the number 1 10 there for a while, and then had a really significant drop off in selection towards the end. But he's gone to Toulon. He had an amazing time there from what I saw as well. He played really well, so it'd be interesting to see how he benefits from that experience. Because I think, Yeah, I think that'll do him wonders. I'm interested in is it Max Bury from the Force as well. I thought he was quality last year in the games that he played. Quite a sensible player. Liner as well. I think for me, I like the way he controlled the game. Whether or not he gets the first crack at it, we'll see. But I think he's got that a little bit more, maybe not as offload, sidestep kind of fly half, but just someone who you can build a game around, which I think will be really good. But yeah, look, I'm excited to see a lot of things. I guess the start of the season's always like that. I think the Force, for me, are a team who are doing good things. We spoke earlier about kind of succession planning, and it was nice to hear Whitey say that, because you are getting that a little bit from them. And I guess the way the club's set up, admin-wise and financially, they're able to do that, which is kind of a positive.
Yeah, and you're right to highlight the 10s at the moment, because it was once upon a time, and I think back to around that 2015 period, where yourself, Christian Leofano, Quade Cooper, Bernard Foley, there was 4 really experienced 10s that had come through. But after that, there was a sudden drop-off, and it didn't seem like there was any succession planning with 10s. You'd have guys that, given the odd opportunity when maybe a Foley was injured, a Mac Mason kind of comes in, for instance, but then he gets chewed up and spat out. Over the last 4 years, with guys like Christian leaving, yourself, Bernard, Quade, there's been 4 years of development, really. We've seen Carter Gordon have his kind of come into his own last year, and I think he'll be better for the World Cup campaign. But you're right to highlight Nola Lolesio. Like, he, back in 2020, hadn't even played a Super Rugby game. He ends up playing for the Wallabies in his first year. How much improvement do you get having played 3-4 years of Super Rugby under your belt as a 10? Like, you by no means the finished product, are you? Just 1 or 2 years into it, and we're very quick to pass judgment on 10s after 1 or 2 seasons, or if things don't work out for the Wallabies immediately.
Yeah, you look how Noah was managed, and then you look how, say, Carter was managed, and you look at the end of the 4 years and you say who's in a better spot. And it's an interesting one. No one was given the reins right from the get-go. I know when I was at Wallabies, he was he was kind of given 5-6 games or whatever starting, and I think that's the way to go in terms of allowing guys to have confidence. But I get quite frustrated at how we manage our 10s. It happened to me as well when I started. You kind of get given a lot early, and then you're not given time to develop. And a lot of conversations I have with other people, I speak about, say, my development, and then a guy like Aaron Cruden. By the time we played each other in under 20s, I had 30-odd super caps. Aaron Cruden had none. The next year, he was well ahead of me in terms of his development, a much better player, much more rounded player, where I was kind of picking up scraps, because probably been given too much too early. And I just see that happen again with Noah. I felt like he got given a lot early, whereas he would have been much better just to develop over time. 10's a very hard position. You obviously, particularly the goal kickers, you've got higher line speed teams now, which is really difficult. And I thought we did that well with Carts. Right up until the World Cup, I feel like we lost a year or two of development with him. He was developing so well. He was, physically ready to play Test rugby. You saw that in the way he tackles and the way he takes the ball to the line. And then I feel like we stitched him up at the World Cup. No, I feel like he, I don't know if he's better for that World Cup experience. I don't know who's better, Noah or Carter, in terms of experience from that World Cup. I think, Carts went to it, sure, but is that experience that you want to have? Is that really helpful? I'm not certain. So it'll be interesting to see how both those guys respond, because it's been very different journeys, and I dare say Noah might be saying, "Oh, it was a little blessing in disguise that I didn't go to the World Cup."
Yeah, that's a fascinating one. Look, it does mean that heading into a Lions series, I think everything's on the line. Super Rugby becomes so important, form and continuity of selection. I think Noah Lolesio is going to be given first crack in the 10 jersey with the Brumbies. Jack Debrasini coming back from a foot injury, so he'll probably get first opportunity there. What happens with the Reds? Does Harry McLaughlin-Phillips get a crack over Tom Liner, who's himself coming back from an injury? We know James O'Connor's had a hamstring just recently. Over at the Western Force, we've got Ben Donaldson, Max Bury, Rajan Pasatoa, so 3 10 options there. So there's definitely candidates in the mix. That'll be fascinating to see who kind of takes their opportunities. Another guy that I'm looking forward to seeing this year is Darcy Swain, and I think he's got a physical profile that, if he can get his discipline right, is an exciting player. And he's been well schooled with Dan McKellar and Laurie Fisher. Now the Brumbies have got Ben Moen there, who's come in, a bit of a change in kind of the guard with the Brumbies coaching team this year. Before we let you go, there's the first rounds of the competition. It gets underway. It's a really exciting one with the Chiefs and Crusaders. Both sides got some injuries. Chiefs have lost Sam Kane, Peter Gus-Solakula, Brody Retallick. That's going to be a huge task to kind of get past those sorts of departures, which are massive. Rebels Brumbies, that'll be a really exciting opening clash. Force Hurricanes, as we spoke about with Nic White. The Blues hosting Fiji. Can Fiji kick on with Mick Byrne off the back of a really impressive World Cup campaign? Highlanders, Moana, Pacifica, and then the Reds and the Waratahs up in Brisbane. Can the Tars turn it around after a pretty disappointing trial period? What 1 or 2 games really catch your eye there?
I think the opening one, obviously, with Chiefs, Crusaders, I think that was the opening game last year from memory, and the Chiefs did a number on the Crusaders, and then they, as the Crusaders do, they peak at the right time. I'm interested to see the 12 come back for Chiefs. I forget his name really quickly. Darcy, I think, injured him in a test match.
Yeah, so you're talking about Quinn Tubaya. Yeah.
Yes, Quinn Tubaya. Yeah, he. I'm very excited to see him. I think he's a quality player. Chiefs struggled, actually. They just came up here in Japan. They had a couple games. They got dusted by Panasonic. I'm not sure how much of it was their first string team, but yeah, it's probably not what you want leading into an opening game against the Crusaders. But look, I think the opening game, it's more excitement about watching it, seeing how it all goes. But obviously the teams like the Crusaders peak at the right time of the year. But yeah, look, I'm really excited to see how the Rebels go for many reasons. But I think just how what's been going on. But I think they've also got one of the best squads in quite a while now, so that'll be really good. And the Brumbies first up, I know. The Rebels actually, I know when I was there, we wouldn't mind playing the Brumbies. We felt like we had the game that kind of suited them a little bit, and managed to get a couple of wins here and there. So I think they'll be looking for that. That could be a good one to start the season.
Yeah, there's actually really, I think, mouthwatering matchups all along the way, and it'll be a great kind of early sign about the Western Force, how they go up against a Hurricanes team, generally really physical. And we know that, our friend Nic White, first opportunity for him, first opportunity for Ben Donaldson, a bit of a new era there. And if they can make a statement, that's a huge moment for Australian rugby, because there's been a few false dawns with some of the newer franchises. Now it's probably a time that you'd like to see them start to make a statement. The Reds Tars, that's a big one for 2 different reasons. One, Les Kiss, a new coaching side, having come in for Brad Thorne. But the Waratahs need to get some early runs, because if they don't, it could be a really tough season for them. They've got a really tough draw. They play the Crusaders twice, the Brumbies twice. They play Fiji up in Fiji. Good luck. They need to get an early win on the board, I think. Otherwise, it could be a tough campaign for Darren Coleman, who's looking for a contract retention himself. Hey, look, that's a wrap. That's an hour that we've racked up. I'm sure, hopefully, try to speed it up a little bit in the future. But there's so much to cover in the first week of the Super competition. Good to see you. Hopefully, your partner and child have been patient, not crying too much in the background. But thanks for coming on board. Really exciting. As we say, please rate, review, and get in touch with us via social media. And looking forward to a bumper year ahead.
Yeah, can't wait. Thanks for having me. And yeah, everyone send some questions out. Love to engage and answer a few questions that we're all thinking.
Cheers. We'll see you next week.
Unreal. Cheers, Christy.